So I want to say a warm welcome to Kirsten Booth and Steve Robinson from Thales. And I would love you to shortly introduce yourself before we jump into the actual theme. Would you start, Kirsten, please? You are so very welcome. I'm so excited about this.
Hello, everybody. So my name's Kirsten Booth. I'm the Head of Talent Acquisition for Thales. I'm so privileged and I'm really excited to be able to share our case study with you. So I'll hand over to Steve.
Hi everybody, I'm Steve Robinson. Also very thrilled to be here and share our story. So a bit of background for me, I'm a Scrum Master. I've been working in Scrum for over 10 years, so predominantly in the software industry. So it's quite a big leap for me to come over to HR, but it's been massively exciting.
Very good. You are both very welcome, and I'm glad to have you both online because we can look at things from two different perspectives. So a Scrum Master, a more facilitative perspective, and then you, Kirsten, leading a team of, I think you're 20.
Well, we were 20, we're now 24.
Thank you, exactly. So good. So we're going to have a couple of themes where we're going to dive in. How we are going to work today is that me and Kirsten and Steve are going to talk about things. So Kirsten and Steve are going to take us through a theme first. Then we're going to chat a little bit with Steve and Kirsten, and then we will move on to the next theme. So we've got a couple of themes here. I'm just going to mention them for people so that you make sure to stay online. We're going to talk about the importance of the capability build in the beginning. So when you start with Agile HR, how important is it to start learning this properly? Then we're going to talk about the first 90 days and what the early gains were when starting to work this way. Then jumping into being evidence-based. So a HR team working with Agile requires evidence to make decisions. So what did that look like for the Thales team? Then looking into delivering value faster by stopping the work. That's a massive contradicting sentence there. We're stopping the work to go faster. What does that really mean? Then we've got an amazing team called Unleashing the Team. So how to really bring the full potential in from the full team. And then beyond imagination. So those are our themes today. So let's dive into this. I will hand over to Kirsten and Steve, and you can take us through. I'll stop sharing.
So thank you, everybody. We're so excited to share our little journey with you. Before we get into the sort of nitty and the gritty of the case study, I just wanted to take a step back and really give you a bit of a view of Thales and what we do. So could you just pop onto the next slide for me, Steve? So Thales is huge. As you can see, we've got 83,000 employees in 68 countries. So we're big. In the UK, we're slightly smaller. We've got nearly 7,000 employees across 9 sites. Just to give you a bit of a view, we had about 770 people start their career with us in 2020. So we're still hiring, we're continuing to hire big numbers of people, and it's often in very critical niche roles. So we're really looking for sort of niche skills when we go out to market. In terms of actually what Thales does and what Thales is actually a French-owned company, and we design and build electrical systems and services to those key markets there, so aerospace, defence, security. And some of the stuff we do is like mega exciting. You know, we do sonar systems for the Royal Navy, we do missile systems, autonomous air systems, and we've now branched out into doing a lot more in digital security. So some amazing stuff, and we really do hire some amazing minds. Some of the clients that we work with are the armed forces, Ministry of Defence, governments, etc. So hopefully that will give you a little bit of an insight into what Thales does in a nutshell. So we're going to go in and talk about the importance of building capability. But before we do this, I kind of need to take a bit of a step back. Just talk you through really the sorts of work that's involved in the talent acquisition team, just so you can get an idea of what we do and how our daily lives are made up and the work that we conduct. So at the moment, we've got 24 awesome talent acquisition partners that form the team. We're split geographically up and down the country. We're expert recruiters, but we recruit across a lot of disciplines. So we do anything from professional services right the way through to manufacturing operatives. So a really, really big range. On a daily basis, we get involved heavily in sourcing. So it's all about creating talent pools and pipelines, converting passive candidates to active candidates, working the market, being brand ambassadors, doing a lot of database mining and looking on social media platforms for those rocking horse candidates. We also get involved heavily in shortlisting and screening candidates. We do a lot of work on CBI and competency-based interviews and assessments. We have to do a lot of feedback to candidates, and we do have to hold a lot of hands throughout the hiring process. There's a lot of nervous people out there who really don't know what to expect, so there's a lot of hand-holding. And we also really have to challenge hiring managers, and we are the gatekeepers really to best practice. There's a lot of bias that still goes on when we're doing recruitment, so we really have to take a step back and challenge. We do a lot of work on processing offers, administration, all of that kind of stuff around onboarding. And then, of course, there's constantly new tools out there, the latest ways of finding people. So we need to make sure that we are current. In the team, we recently got together to work out what our mission and our values were. I'll just read the vision because that kind of summarises what we want to do. And it's all about providing a seamless recruitment experience and to ensure that we deliver the skills required today to meet the business demands of tomorrow. So that gives you a little bit of a view of what we're all about. And then just in terms of the volume of the work that we transact, a couple of headline figures for you there. We transacted 860 hires already to date in 2021. And our internal mobility rate is 46%, which is really great news because we want to be retaining that talent and moving people around the business. So you can see there just from those stats how busy we are as a team of 24 in Thales UK. So before we go into the building capability, if I take you back to the midst of time in February 2020, so pre-COVID, I just stepped into the head of talent acquisition role, and we looked at where the talent acquisition team was and what we needed to do to evolve. And we noticed and had some real concerns with what we were seeing on the ground. So this is really just a list for you so you can understand the problems that we were facing and the reason that we needed to change. So at the time, we were a team of 20. And we were regionally dispersed and we were functionally aligned. So we had single points of failure in the team. So we'd have one talent acquisition partner that look after bids and projects. We'd have somebody else that was doing engineering. So if they were to leave, they would take all their contacts and knowledge with them. So they were single points of failure. And the work was massively unfairly distributed because no hire or no role is equal. And this was causing quite a few conflicts and inefficiencies in the team. We had no way of prioritising and understanding the business value of that particular hire. To a hiring manager, everything is urgent to them. And so we didn't have a mechanism to sort of wade through that noise and really work out what was going to add the most business value and strategically help Telus forward. So we needed to understand and put together a prioritisation framework. We had no real data that meant anything. We couldn't really, in a transparent way, communicate with our customers because we didn't have any meaningful data. I know that the team felt disconnected and they had no measures of meaningful success. It was all very individual rather than team focused. We had an ATS system which we still work with, which is Workday, but it actually was hindering us and wasn't working with us. So we needed to have a look at a better way of doing things. And the team was often, on the feedback from the retros that we had, etc., that we were often seen as order takers, and that actually we didn't have a mechanism to challenge and hold people to account and make hiring managers understand that often they were blockers to our hiring and that they could really make a difference if they changed some of their behaviours too. So we wanted to try and change that perception of TA, that we were experts and not just order takers. And we also wanted to try and get some feedback from our key customers on what was working and what wasn't, so that we could continuously improve. And then on the backdrop of all of this, because of COVID, we had to completely rework our process because they wanted to implement a new change at UK level. So we had all of this stuff going on that we knew we needed to change, but we didn't know really where to start with it. So what we did, we had a look at those problem statements, and then we reached out to the Agile HR community and RENA and started having a look at how Agile might be able to change the way that we worked. And so we consulted with RENA, we recruited Steve, who's here today, to help us with our journey. And we put everybody through the Agile for HR course and accreditation. And it was important that we did that because we wanted the team to understand where we were going, the why, and how this change could really, really help us. So going on that and really understanding the principles and what we could change was really eye-opening for us and the team. So I think, Steve, over to you to talk a little bit about some of the guiding principles.
Yeah, so got kind of like a recipe, if you like, for how I start with teams when I join up with them to start looking at Agile and how it might help them. So I try and use this ADAPT model, and I have to give kudos to Mike Cohn for teaching me this back in the day. So the first point is awareness, and that is the awareness within the team that the current ways of working are no longer acceptable. You know, I've had teams where I've spent a lot of time on this. If you don't get this right, people don't buy into it to start with, and you're struggling straight away. So awareness is always a starting point. Desire, so this is a desire to actually change to the Agile framework. So there's a bit of a sell involved here to describe what Agile is, what benefits it can bring, and how it can overcome some of the problems. Ability is the next step on, and this is about learning how to be Agile. So you've got to start using it, understanding how it will work and how it can benefit your team. You hope then to have some successes that you can share, and what you do, you promote the journey you're on, the wins that you've had so far. This generates some excitement and some interest in what you're doing. Then the final step is you get into this transfer stage where you're starting to transfer your knowledge onto other teams and other areas that haven't heard of Agile before. So it continues a cycle of spreading Agile throughout your place of work and your community. So this is quite interesting. When I came in to Thales, that they'd already gone through the awareness and desire piece. They knew things need to change. I came in on the last day of the training course. So that was great to see everyone, really excited, having been through the training. And it's like when you leave a training course, like, oh, great, really inspired. But then, how do I actually do this? So that was a really great time for me to come in and say, okay, guys, this is fantastic. You've seen some of the benefits that you can bring here. So let's get down to it. Let's get underneath these problems and work out how we can be Agile. As a Scrum Master, I always fall back on the empirical process control, as these are my pillars: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. These three things are absolutely key if you're going to be successful in an Agile transformation. Again, the whole Scrum framework is built on this empirical process control as well. So it already has a lot of feedback and inspection loops built in to help you. One of the most important things that Scrum brings actually are these values. So this is values for the team to live by every day. I'll just go through some of these, so mix them around. So like commitment. Okay, if we've made our work transparent, agreed how we're going to tackle it, let's make a commitment that we're going to commit to the plan that we've made. We're going to focus on it. Now we've got a goal, we're going to focus on achieving it. Being open, we're going to be open about the state the work is in. We're going to be honest about the challenges we're facing, successes, failures, and it kind of leads into courage as well. There's going to be no fake rag statuses. There's going to be no greens if it's not green. We're going to call out problems. And then respect. Team members respect each other for being capable and independent. Everyone has an equal voice to bring issues to the table. My guiding principles for any new team that I join, and it was great to see that it transcended disciplines. It's not just an IT thing, fitted perfectly into HR as well. Another thing I looked at, the first couple of weeks I was in, I spent a lot of time with the team really digging into the issues and the problems, kind of challenging myself. It's like, okay, as a Scrum Master, is this really the right thing to bring Scrum to play in this environment? I went back and looked at the Agile Manifesto, kind of think, okay, what does this really mean? Again, how easily does it transcend from IT to HR? And, when you get under the skin of it, all this stuff is, it fits really, really well. It's important for us to focus on how we work together over what tools we're using. Getting stuff done is far more important than writing a book about how we might do it. Stay in touch with our customers. Let's build trust through, transparency and feedback loops. And when you look at the definition of Agile, it's the ability to move quickly. Nothing goes to plan, so set yourself up to be able to pivot quickly, change course easily. I'd examined a lot of the theory around Agile and Scrum and came to conclusions about, okay, how are we going to approach this? And it was quite pivotal for me to accept that although I'm a Scrum Master, I'm not going 100% Scrum. I'm going to take what I can understand will work in this environment, and I'm also going to pull from other sort of frameworks as well, such as Kanban, XP as well. It's all about selecting the right tools for the right environment. See, I put a question mark straight over sprint review there. It's like, in a service environment, what's a sprint review going to look like? What else have we got but the numbers at the end of every time box? Being comfortable to start without knowing all the answers was really key in it. Kind of a big step for me, but glad we made it. Okay, so I think we're going to pause there for discussion questions on that subject.
Oh, brilliant. I am opening up for any questions in the chat. Meanwhile, we're waiting for a couple of questions. I just picked up a couple of very important points here, in my opinion. So first of all, it seems like you had recognized a need to change before looking for training. So you didn't just go for a training because of a training, but you really knew that you wanted to start improving the way how you worked. How would you say that recognizing the gap, can you talk about that, elaborate about that a little bit more, Kirsten? How did that feel? Where did you see that, okay, this is what we need? Where did you find Agile HR? So where did that come up?
Looking back now, I think that there was a few things that were sort of bubbling, and there was a lot of discontentment in the team. There's a lot of change in that I'd recently taken over, the direction of travel, where the business was going. We knew that we couldn't carry on as we were. And there was some other individuals in the HR team, I think, that had reached out and started having discussions with you about how Agile could solve some of these key problems. And they initiated that conversation. And then from that, then we arranged all of the training and started working out how we could adopt the Agile principles into TA.
Brilliant. One more thing, which I think is very important, and love that Steve jumped in right after the training, because quite often teams, when they want to start changing the way of working, it's actually building new behaviors. Yeah. It's building a new habit, a new behavior, and it's very, very easy to slip back into the way that you've done things before. And thus, it's good to have an external coach supporting you, creating that safe space where you are actually verbalizing that it's okay that we are trying, experimenting, testing, maybe even failing, opening up for conversations. So one thing that I would like to kind of ask you is, because in the training, you learn about Agile, you learn about design thinking, you learn about how to work in an Agile team, what that means for HR teams. But it's not a recipe. It's not like, here you go, take this and copy paste it and start working this way. But you really have to contextualize that. So could you, Steve, first mention a little bit about, you came from IT and you started contextualizing Agile for HR. Can you elaborate on those conversations a little bit, how to contextualize it and to make it your own? I love what you talked about, the principles and values.
I really go back to understanding your problems. It's all too easy to get on the Agile bandwagon and think, oh yeah, Agile is going to solve all our problems. It's not going to solve anything. It's going to highlight issues faster, perhaps. So then, it is up to you to decide what to do with those problems once you've found them. So for me, it's just understanding the problem.
Did you also prioritize them? So where to start? Because I mean, if there are 10 problems, you probably need to focus on starting somewhere.
Yeah, I think I'll get into that bit on the next section, but I can go back to that empirical process control model. Transparency, for me, that is always a start. If you have to see the work, get it on the table, understand what you're dealing with before you can make decisions on what to do with it.
Brilliant. We're probably going to hear as well how this has impacted your customers or your stakeholders during today. So that will be exciting, because you mentioned, Kirsten, that you recognized that they had expectations towards you. You were order takers and not experts. You were not an expert team helping them with business value, driving business value and finding very important talent, but you were more like taking orders. So it's going to be interesting to see how that changed. We've got a couple of questions here. I think that we are going to, so Yagini is asking, how well established were the agile practices within Thales already? Was that something that you saw happening in Thales, or were you among the first teams?
Yeah, we were among the first teams, and my actual knowledge of agile principles was very limited. So when the team went through all of that training, I was going through it with them firsthand. And obviously we had Steve from an objective point of view joining at the right time. And I have to be honest, there was quite a bit of reticence from the team. They were very nervous, quite skeptical. And so we have been on this journey. And so I think the training helped, but they still had more questions than we had answers to, because we had to kind of work out where we were going to start first. So
awesome. One thing that I think is important to point out here with people who are listening to this is that you might feel like, oh my God, do I have to do all of this to become agile? But you don't have to be. Now we're hearing a story about a team that started to build agility with a very big vision of working throughout the methodology, frameworks, the values, the whole package. But there are ways of starting lighter and smaller as well. Let's move to the next section. We're going to talk about the first 90 days and early gains.
Okay, so this is almost addressing the question of how did we start? I'd spent the first couple of weeks with all the team members getting underneath the skin of everything, and it got to reach the point, so okay, we're going to have to start trying something now. The first thing I really wanted to tackle was the team. So the team was set up in a traditional hierarchical manner. Everyone had a report. As Kirsten's already alluded to, everyone was working in silo, and this was one of the biggest issues I saw. People were not sharing the way they were working. Everyone had their own way of doing things. There's evidence of people working against each other as well. When you have a hierarchy, naturally people want to be the next one to take the step up the ladder. So there's some unhealthy competition there. Single points of failure, as we talked about already. So what I was keen to establish was a team environment where everybody's voice was equal. Just because you might have manager in your name, it didn't mean you were any important than anyone else. You needed everyone in the team to get the work done. And we started to talk about, success was a team success. If we're talking about numbers of vacancies we're going to fill, it's not how many an individual fills, it's how many the team will fill. So that leads, the team to start helping each other, being more open with each other, and sharing better ways of doing things. So that was our first real big move. Kind of alongside that, as we brought the team together, I ran some sessions to map out kind of a high level process. So taking the benefit of everyone's experience. So, okay, guys, we're working as a team now. What is our recruitment process? What steps should we be going through to make this as seamless as we can? So yeah, a few sessions mapping that out. What that gave us then was the headlines, or the sections that we could drop into a Kanban board. So this was, another game changer for us. For the first time ever, we could see all of our work across a board. Everything was transparent. We could see what sections of the process the work was sitting in. And, at a glance, you could see any bottleneck across our process. So that was the first couple of big steps we took. We quickly moved on to, after that, was something that we called sizing, so relative sizing. So traditionally in talent acquisition, the team was measured on the number of vacancies they filled. So that assumes that every vacancy is equal. You might hire a pink fluffy unicorn, and that's given the same value as test engineer. I guess there's more test engineers around than pink fluffy unicorns, but you get my point. So I was keen to find a measure that better reflected the work people were doing, and this is where we started to introduce relative sizing. So this takes into account complexity of a hire. How hard is it going to be to get this person into the business? We started this off by talking about a fairly bulk standard vacancy that everyone in the team was familiar with, and we created a baseline. So we used the Fibonacci scale. So this is a modified Fibonacci scale used throughout Agile teams around the world. So if you've ever been involved in Agile teams, you might be familiar with this framework anyway. So we found our baseline, and from that point on, any rec or any vacancy could be compared against our baseline. Is this going to be easier than our baseline? Is it going to be more difficult? And instantly you can start to get a really quick idea of how much complexity you have in your backlog. My favorite analogy there, I'm afraid, it's like how much coffee is it going to take to get this person on board? That's my one. See, I have many coffee vessels at home as well. So what did this give us? Well, you can see across the bottom, all of a sudden we had a whole range of sprint and flow metrics where we could start measuring, how our work was performing throughout the process. We were able to get a burn down chart that gives us an idea of how we're performing in the current sprint against previous sprints. So if we used to, burning through like 400 points every 4 weeks, are we, moving any quicker than that? Are things slowing down? Gives you a daily insight into how the team are performing. We could see how many days on average work was done in each stage. Again, if things were going up, we could see that instantly and address that. We also had a velocity range. So this gives you a picture of how the team are performing sprint on sprint over time. Next one is points by stage. Again, we can identify bottlenecks from this piece of data as well. You can see there we had a lot in interview 1 stage. So is there an issue there? And yes, there usually was. We usually couldn't get hiring managers to commit to a date. So, you could spend time instantly on trying to address some of these problems. And the last chart may be a bit controversial. However, we did have the data to show us how many points each person in the team was carrying. Important to point out at this point that we only use this to protect people, not to kind of, get the whip out and say, okay, you're only carrying 50 points. You got capacity, get some more on your plate. It was simply to make sure people weren't overloading themselves. So we had a lot of people that like to say, yes, I can do that. We want to say, no, hang on, be realistic. So yeah, from, simple exercise of applying some sizing, relative sizing to all of our work, we suddenly had all this data to help us identify any problems in the process.
I think, Steve, it's worth pointing out how empowering this data was, because we were able to hold hiring managers to account and make decisions if they weren't providing feedback in a timely way, which was impacting candidate experience. And the message to us would be, everything's urgent. Well, clearly it's not that urgent if it's taken you 3 weeks to come back with some feedback on some of your interviews. So I think it empowered the team too.
Going on from that, I'm just going to talk about our first little victory with some of this data that we suddenly had at our disposal. So what we identified from our daily burn down tracker was that we were starting to drift out to our normal burn down rate. So it's like, okay, this is interesting. What's going on here? Then we were able to use the points by stage graph to identify where the bottleneck was in our process. We found it was actually to do with offers. So we'd recently had a new approval process dropped on us where every position had to go up to our chief operating officer to be signed off. Obviously, getting time in his diary was a bit of a challenge, as you can imagine. So very quickly we could identify what the problem was. It's like, okay, Mr. COO, you're not giving us the time we need. You're impacting our process. But we wanted to approach him and get something more regular in his diary. We wanted to use a bit more than just the raw data. So we went out to our hiring manager community as well and asked for some feedback, knowing full well we're going to get some pretty nasty answers back. But actually, it's okay. It's like, come on team, it's okay, we're going to get some bad responses here, but it's what we need, it's going to help us in the long run. It's a bit of a tough ask, but we went out and done it. We got the data, we got the feedback, we went up to our COO, presented the position we were in. Data trumps opinion, yeah, he found it hard to disagree with what we were presenting to him. As a result, he put in a meeting twice a week. So twice a week, he now reviews all of the vacancies and approves them, gets the approvals back to us, as I say, twice a week. What we saw in the following sprint, we managed to half the amount of time the vacancies were stuck in that approval stage. That was really our first little victory with our data. And again, that was really empowering from the team, for them to see how much influence we had all of a sudden off the back of this data that we were creating. Quick example here as well is another example of how we used some of the data to influence how we change things within the team. Well, during the pandemic, when furlough first kicked in, talent acquisition was pretty much split in half. Half the team were put on furlough and the other half were left trying to service all the work that we still had on. What was really interesting, that despite all these new routines people were getting into, all the distraction and disruption from COVID, we still managed to throw in a velocity increase of 12% over a single sprint. We were like, how has this happened? What's going on here? So, we kind of all got together and started talking about it. And there is some research out there actually about team sizing, which we pulled on. So for one, you got Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. He's known for the two pizza team. You might have heard of this. So whenever he put a team together, he said, I have to be able to feed this team in a meeting with 2 pizzas. If I can't, the team's too big. We found we were, a little bit in this scenario. So the picture there of everyone around the table, it's kind of what we were like. It's too many people. You can't get everyone. You can't hear from everyone. People could do a bit of social loafing, just go along and sit around and not participate. We also, looked at Brooks Law as well. So Brooks Law has got an interesting piece in it about communication lines that says, the more people you have in your team, the more communication lines there are, the more time you're going to spend managing these relationships and trying to understand what everyone else is doing. So what we decided to do as a team, taking into account our data, all the research out there, was to split ourselves into 2 teams. I looked at some of the agile scaling models. We'd already got one Scrum team that was working quite well. We wanted to continue working in a Scrum format. So we selected the LESS framework, which is large scale Scrum. It's one of the more simple scaling models out there, which is why I like it so much. It kind of lets teams carry on working in a Scrum kind of environment, but also has the connections at each end to make sure the teams are aligned. We were still working off the same backlog. We were still getting all of our vacancies in through the same funnel. We set up a few guidelines about, okay, if we have 2 teams, how are we going to split the work between the 2 teams? We agreed that and what we would do if one team started overflowing. So we set, the basic rules and guidelines for the 2 teams. In terms of assigning people, me and Kirsten pretty much left the room and asked the teams to self-select what teams they were going to go into. So that was, it's like dropping a bit of a bomb on them. Glad we did. It was really good fun. The model there of our teams, it just kind of demonstrates how we split into 2 teams. So we shared a couple of people, like myself as a Scrum Master. We had some admin support, and obviously Kirsten was kind of working as a PO kind of role at that time. So we shared those roles, but everyone else was split between the 2 teams. The green cross just indicates where we were, where we split teams. You can see the continuous upward trajectory once we'd split as well.
I don't know whether it's important to mention here that because we let the teams sort of organise themselves, they felt totally part of the decision-making process and the journey, and it wasn't forced upon them. We made it together. I think it's quite important just to stress that. So these are just some of the top sort of headlines really about the difference that you can make in 90 days. I mean, we didn't set out to set the world on fire, but you can see some of this, that we did make a difference in 90 days. So obviously with the use of data and transparency, our customers can see where we're up to in the process, and we're able to share status updates. We're also able to use data to make some key decisions and understand some of our blockers and also ways that we can improve. You can see there headlining really the productivity increased by 73%, and we were able to compare, you know, one sprint to an next and see the difference. So yeah, 73% is quite a hike. We were continually upskilling each other. When we tried a new technique called swarming, which I know they're using software, but in a recruitment sense, it was looking at one really difficult role, you know, like a rocking horse, and everybody using all the skills and all the networks and concentrating on it together for 30 minutes to find that ultimate candidate with the right skills. And we had so much success. That's part of what we do now on a regular basis. The engagement of the team, we were really keen that with all of this change that we constantly reflected and brought the team together, and we created a wall of awesomeness that they put together so that we could review, you know, how far we'd come, but also make sure that we got those daily sprint calls so everyone had that connection, and also monthly retrospectives so we understood what was working and what wasn't, and that they had a voice as well, and that we would action things that they were saying. We weren't just sort of taking notes and not doing anything about it. And they have fed back through the retrospectives that, you know, that expert thing that we wanted to achieve, and through the use of data, etc. They found that they were able to challenge hiring managers a lot more and feel like experts. So that really changed culturally for them. And I think the other thing to point out is that, you know, the team now are certified practitioners in Agile. And if you'd asked them right at the start of this journey, you know, how this would have made a change to them, I don't think they can believe it. And you'll hear some stories from them a bit later on. So, yeah, I think the headline is the productivity there. You can't argue with that. Increased by 73%. Pretty wow.
I'm just blown away by this. It is so amazing to see what you've done together as a team, what kind of values you as leading the team are also using. And that is represented by you walking out the room and saying, please self-organize around the value in the best way you can. That is just amazing. We've got a couple of questions there. I have a couple of points which I would like to just mention here for the listeners so that we really focus on these ones. Well, then when you start visualizing your work, it might be quite painful because you start seeing what doesn't work. And you need to start working with the bottlenecks, where you see blockers, where you see the problems. And usually that's where people get quite scared and are like, oh, Agile doesn't work because it just brings us problems. But that's the point with the whole thing. Can you elaborate on this, Kirsten, how it felt when you started seeing your work and seeing your team's delivery? What was the reactions there?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think at first they were quite reticent about it, and it is quite scary, but we were all new to this. But actually, by being able to see it in black and white, and then seeing the blockers and how many requisitions were being blocked and the time it was taken to move things along, we were then able to have challenging conversations with hiring managers and make decisions on things quickly. And I think that really helped once they started seeing those efficiencies, and, you know, really gave them an encouragement that they needed. Brilliant.
The sizing was also something which I just wanted to dance around the room and seeing that the team, HR team, is doing proper sizing. The metrics you have there is remarkable. I mean, very few HR teams in the world currently can lead their work. Maybe yes, on a HR service side where they got like tickets coming in and we got a ticket system and they're following up the tickets. But this isn't that type of work. This is specialist work. This is professional work, basically consulting and using a lot of different skills. And now you've got those metrics up there. How difficult was that? And how difficult was it for the team to start understanding these metrics? Because they are all visible for the team. It's not just managers that are seeing this.
Yeah, I mean, it is really for the team. You know, these metrics are for the team. It's not to really show other people how we're doing, although we have used them for that. It was a bit of a challenge, I won't lie. So this was an interesting point coming in as a Scrum Master into HR. So to try and get the systems that I was used to using that could create all of these charts, you know, I wasn't taken entirely seriously, I suppose. It's like, HR, I've got a Scrum Master, what's going on here? It's like, so there were a few hurdles to be able to get access to the right tools. But, you know, you can use Excel to do this. It's not it's not complete rocket science. Got a bit of Excel skill, you can pull these together. Once you're tracking your work. In terms of the team understanding them, when I introduced them, I had a session with the team just explaining to them what each graph showed, and you see over time that they're playing it back to you now. It's like, oh, hey Steve, I noticed we've got a big number of points sitting in CV sourcing. Do you think we should do something about that? Like, yeah, sure. What do you want to do? Got any ideas?
Yeah.
So it generates conversations every day now.
Kirsten, how are you using these metrics as a leader of the team? I mean, they are using them themselves, leading their own work, discussing and finding things that they can do. How do you see that this has helped you as a leader with having the sizing, the velocities, understanding the workload of different people this clearly?
Well, we've been able to use this data, particularly around forecasting. So I'm sure a lot of businesses have this problem, but every year the business lines will come to us and predict a forecast, and they'll give us low, medium or high. And year on year, that is completely wrong. So just to give you a view, this year we're already at 158% of the top end of that predicted forecast.
Wow.
And using this data and understanding capacity levels, because ultimately when the engine is full, we can only do what we can do. It's given us options then to have discussions around additional headcount, or we've actually set up a new sprint team that looks at outsourcing, but it's given us the mechanisms to go back to the business and challenge and say, you told us you wanted this. What you've done is this. Now we're going to have to use an alternative solution to find the hire for you, but you'll have to pay for that, rather than us just being this constant vacuum where we were just taking everything in. So it's really elevated the level of discussions that we have at senior level and the decisions we make to protect the team as well.
It brings you to a professional conversation around, and you've got data to back yourself up. It's not about whining that I don't have enough resources anymore, but you can actually show what's going on, right? Yeah. And because you're talking about strategic things, such as recruiting very important positions, it's not a conversation that should we have the resources for this or not. So very, very good. We've got one question here. Why did you use Kanban? Why not Scrum board? Difficulties embedding and sustaining Kanban usage. I think this would work out here, right? Because you started to use Kanban because you could see the flow of recruitment work throughout.
Yeah. So I guess Scrum boards traditionally don't have quite as many, columns, if you like, to go through. Traditionally on a Scrum board, I see to do in progress testing, they tend to follow a project methodology, whereas we really wanted to tailor our board to something meaningful to us. It's like, okay, this is our process. These are the bits we want to track. We didn't want to be constrained in any way by the software that was available to us. We could have access to Jira, but actually the headache and overhead of using that to create this workflow, we just found another simpler tool that we could use to create our Kanban board. I suppose
one thing that comes up to me is that Kanban works really well when you have an ongoing working process and you want to start improving your work around that process. If you're developing something really novel that you haven't done before and you've got a team who can do that, then Scrum can be a good example of a framework to use that. So, but Kanban is very, very useful to, especially when you have something which is kind of developed and working in a good way already, and you want to start visualizing, understanding what's going on and improving that.
Yeah.
Great. I'm just aware of time because there's a lot to go through still. Let's go to the next section.
Sure. Okay.
And hear about, let me see what our next, we talked about data, right, already?
Yeah. Yeah.
So moving on to delivering value faster by stopping the work. Very exciting.
Delivering value faster by stopping the work. Okay, I need to sort of talk about the previous section because it covered a little bit of this as well. So there's two things here. One of the first things that we needed to do was control the amount of work we had. As Kirsten just mentioned, we got 158% of the forecast. So we had to gain control of that work. You know, we were in a position when we started our agile journey that we had the capacity to take everything in. So we were just merrily working away. Here comes the work. We push it through the pipeline, and it was all going well. Then all of a sudden, demand just went through the roof. We were seeing month on month demand at over 200% of capacity. We were drowning. How can we gain control of this? You know, people getting stressed and working all sorts of hours. People didn't feel they were able to say no. It was just a mess. So we looked at a prioritization framework to start with. So okay, across the UK, what roles are going to bring the most value to us at a country level? So, you know, I think we divide it into 5 categories in the end, like, you know, critical, high, strategic, low. You know, we set all these priorities. We made the team feel comfortable with saying no to work to start with. So we've only got capacity to take in critical roles. So be aware that roles are going to be sitting in our backlog for a while. As Kirsten mentioned, we gave options though. It's like, okay, you might think your work is critical, but on a UK level, it drops down the prioritization framework a little bit. However, if it is that important to you, we're going to give you an option. You've got the option of outsourcing at cost, as well as giving an option. You know, surprisingly, some things weren't as important as we first thought they were. But you know, the important point was we gave an option. It's like, you know, if it really does matter that much to you, here's an option for you. We also managed to increase the size of the team as well, so that gave us a little bit more flex in the amount of work we could go through. I guess the point here, deliver faster by stopping the work. You know, put that stop sign up there. It's like, the more work we've got in progress, the longer it's going to take. You know, if you want us to do things quickly, let us take in a smaller amount of work and focus on finishing it rather than starting more. The more you start, the less you're going to finish. You know, get your focus on finishing work. Okay, the second theme I was going to talk about under this section is retrospectives. Retrospective happens at the end of every 4 weeks for us. So this is a chance for people to get together, reflect on the work and how the team has worked together over the last 4 weeks. Ironically, it's the meeting people tend to turn down the most when they're too busy. We're committed to this meeting. You know, it does need a level of discipline, but the benefits from holding it, again, you'll see some of the figures again in a moment, but we really feel that this makes a difference. And this is for us, you know, the essence of embedding continuous improvement. Okay, so what we use the retros for, as well as reflecting, is helping to set a safe environment for the team. So I don't know if any of you are aware of the Prime Directive. This is always read out at the start of any of our retros. It just helps to set that environment for everybody. So it reads, regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills, abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. Just underlines, you know, that point that, you know, everyone's done their best. We discover things, you know, we go through things together, but it's okay. We can talk about it here. We kind of operate our meetings under Vegas rules as well. It's like, you know, what is said in that meeting stays there. It's helpful to encourage the team to surface problems. You know, we don't want white elephants sitting there month on month. Let's just get them out on the table. So obviously subjects do come up that need to be escalated to get help for ourselves, but we make sure the team are always comfortable with that before we go out and ask for help. We also use the retros for quick team building exercise as well, which we found has been really important, especially at the moment. You know, everyone being remote, you know, you lose a lot of the time the team would normally have together. So we always build in a quick team exercise. See an example there, just that, you know, our wall of awesomeness. My team is awesome because, and it makes me feel. So, you know, just fun little things that you can get the team together and go through. We really find that great to run at our retros.
The TA team is very, very competitive, as you can imagine, being in recruitment. And so we try and do fun things where sometimes we split the teams and we have a little competitions and things, don't we, as well, to keep that energy going.
Right, so I was just going to give you a couple of examples of some of the retrospectives that I've used, maybe give you a couple of ideas that you can use with your teams. So I noticed over, this was kind of building up over a sprint and a half. I noticed people were starting to talk on the daily call about pieces of work that were not on the board. So it's like, okay, team, we're meant to be transparent about what we're doing. Yet I'm hearing all this other stuff going on. What's going on? So I run an exercise called the pain snake to literally just call out, it's okay, team, let's be honest with each other. Stick on the wall everything you're doing that is not directly related to a piece of recruitment. As you can see, there's a fair amount of work going on that
we didn't know about.
Yeah. What do we do with that? Okay, so we grouped everything together and started dropping it onto just a basic Eisenhower matrix, really. So that gave us the opportunity to look at the extra work and say, okay, this is not important, it's not urgent, just stop doing it. We don't need to be doing this. What can we delegate? What can we schedule to do later? And you can see we cut down to the important urgent stuff. There was not that much when you compared it against the original board. So that enabled us to give people the freedom to stop doing stuff. It's like, okay guys, it's okay, stop doing it, let's get back to and focus on the real value that we can bring. And you can see the result following that retro. That was at the end of sprint 10, that retro. Sprint 11, we jumped up 64% increase in velocity just through that retro exercise. Stopping the work, really important. So I should have mentioned this. So we try and present a hypothesis after each retro as well. Select something you're going to do. For this one, it's stop doing some work. We said, we believe we can increase velocity by 10% if we stop doing unnecessary work. We did, and it was way higher than that, which is good to see. But at least it gives you a reference point to come back to in the following sprint. So, okay, we said we were going to do this. Did we do it? Yes or no, to start with. And what were the results? So you can see there that was a really positive retro. We even followed it up, the retro after that as well. We've done a follow-up session to say, okay, guys, we stopped doing things. Is there anything you stopped doing you're actually now worried about? Is there stuff that you stopped? You're really pleased you stopped it, you're not worried about it at all anymore? And in fact, did you find any more stuff that you're doing that you want to stop? So, we continue that theme over a couple of sprints. And that was a really, really nice couple of retros there to free the team up to get more valuable work through.
It was amazing to us how much unnecessary work that we were all conducting, and we were all busy, but until we were able to sort of articulate it and put it down somewhere so that we could all see it, it became really clear that we were spending our time on stuff that wasn't adding the value, and that we could prioritize it differently. And it was really eye-opening for the team.
Yeah, so just another example of a different retro. This was less focused. So lean coffee is a technique that's quite widely used for retros as well, where in fact I think you run lean coffees, don't you, Rena, for the community. So this really gives an open canvas to the team. Say, okay guys, what's on your mind? What do you want to chat about? So we got a few themes up, and the subject at the top of everyone's mind was interviewing. People felt like we were going over the top on the amount of interviews we had in our process. So again, we came up with a hypothesis to say, okay, we're going to stop running certain interviews for certain levels of certain grades, if you like, in the company. We don't believe it have a negative impact, but we think it'll give us more time back to focus on more valuable things. And again, you can see there 112% again, just through stopping doing some extra part of the process that we deemed that wasn't necessary anymore. So it's maximize the amount of work not done. It's quite a key theme you come across in Agile. Gives you an idea of the benefits you can bring from retros. Just to finish this section, I think I just add a couple of examples. There are hundreds of retro formats out there. Be imaginative, be creative, nick some templates, create your own, just keep it fresh. I think the worst thing ever is to turn up at a retro and do the same thing every sprint. So just mix it up. Use a session to have some fun, connect with your team, and just find that one thing that can make you better for the next sprint.
Love it. I mean, everything you're telling here is that you're building a high performing team that dares to challenge their own work together. that wants to find improvements and has the help and the space to actually bring those forward. And what really, really makes me glad to see is that you are, even for the improvements, you're creating a hypothesis. How is this going to improve? What's the impact going to be? So that people will be generating more improvements when they see that it really had an impact, rather than what we usually see in the classic management structure, where people tend to write, 10-point ideas, 10 ideas on how they're going to improve, and then half a year later they're looking at the list and nothing's been done.
Yeah. I think just by creating psychological safety and acting on things and making sure that you're following through and they can see the difference really helps. Don't you, Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I think, the most important thing actually about a retro is to follow through on what you agreed. If you've come up with some fantastic ideas and then you turn up to your next retro and nothing's changed or you've not done anything, it's like, well, what was the point of that meeting last time then?
I also love the whole point of stop for a while, just visualize and see where you are. You need to refocus.
Yeah.
And usually when we do this, maybe a leadership team or maybe a HR leadership team looking at the portfolio, or just a team looking at all of their work, when they see what's in front of them, that's when things starts happening. That's when we start making decisions. Yeah. Sometimes I end up working with portfolio meetings where we're looking at all the projects that they started, like 158 projects for a year. And we're starting calculating that if we would realistically work on all of these, we would be ready by 2029. So let's start prioritizing and let's not do some of these. It's so easy to start things, but to really understand what the real capacity is and what we can really get through, that's the key here. Another thing is, did that surprise you, Kirsten, with the dark work? I call it dark work, what you had in a pain snake. Kind of work that is happening somewhere which isn't visible.
Absolutely. And we got this sense that everybody was mad busy, and then you would, the data would tell you one thing, and then actually when you actually saw on that pain snake how much extra stuff people were doing that wasn't adding value, it was absolutely eye-opening.
The same thing happens when you start writing down how many meetings you are in. I just came out from a coaching session where we looked at a person who had a lot of team members who were there just for 50% of the time. And I started calculating after that meeting, you know what, if you say that you've got a 50% person, now remove all the meetings from that. Now remove all that juggling between two different projects. They ended up with basically maybe between 8 to 12 hours in a week, not 50%, not 20 hours, but 8 to 12 hours actual work time. And that talks a lot when you start putting numbers on these things to understand your capacity. Let's move on. There is one question that I want to pick up. What's lean coffee? Lean coffee is basically a session where you come into with people who are interested in chatting, and you make up the themes there and you prioritize the themes and you agree on what you want to talk about. It's peer learning, it's peer coaching, it's talking about certain themes. Sometimes the themes are set up before that. So I just wanted to quickly answer that question. Let's move on.
Oh, unleashing the theme. Well, I think, that quote says it all there. The strength of the team is each individual member. The strength of each member is the team. And I could sit here all day and tell you how amazing they are and how Agile's transformed things for them. But I'd like you to hear firsthand what they say about it too.
Hello, my name's Alice Hardy and I work in talent acquisition at Telus. I've been here for 3 years as a contingent or contractor, and I have been a permanent member of staff for the last 6 months.
My name is Tara and I'm talent acquisition partner, and this is my 3rd month in the team.
Hi, my name's Simon Diav and I've been with the talent acquisition team now for 6.5 years.
Hi, Bobby Sethi, Talent Acquisition Supply Manager for Thales UK. I look after the recruitment suppliers across Thales UK. I've been with the business for 2 years now. I started in a slightly different role. I was actually a recruiter in the team, but actually when I joined back in March 2020 we were just embarking on the transformation into an agile way of working. So great to get on board at that time. Really enjoyed being part of that journey and that transformation, and seeing how it's really changed the service to the business.
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm a talent acquisition team lead at Thales UK, and I've been part of the team for 3.5 years. Working in an agile way to me means staying connected with my team and stakeholders. We have daily stand-ups where we discuss pain points, successes, and this means that we can collaborate to achieve a cohesive approach for our stakeholders and customers, and we work together as a team to solve tricky situations if they arise, and we can celebrate each other's successes.
Agile means to me being transparent, working in teams, learning from mistakes, and being adaptive and creating better solutions.
I've found working in an agile way is more efficient, and being able to categorise and focus on the priority work first is obviously really beneficial.
I think my take on it is that we work collaboratively as a team. We work in a flat structure. We're all empowered to support and develop and shape the service, and it's a continuous improvement approach.
Working in an agile way means to me being adaptable, which is super important in a continually changing and busy demand landscape. Being able to use the lessons that we learn and apply them into our future ways of working, and also to work more collaboratively, using and being empowered by digital tools and data to really understand and apply continuous improvement into our next sprints. I think the key thing for us that's contributed to our success is that we've been brave to try new things. Working in an agile way, you can really look at implementing something, but it doesn't have to stay that way permanently. You can implement a new way of working, but then assess how is it impacting what we do. Is it good or is it bad? Discussing all of the different areas around it, which can then either lead to you changing what you want to do or to implementing new processes. But yeah, being brave is definitely a key to success with working in an agile way, trying new things.
The daily stand-ups that contribute most to team success. It's really helped others understand people's workload and helped anyone who've had issues with blockers or any problems come together on a daily basis, and discussing these verbally with other team members is a great way of finding better ideas and a way to move forward.
Having worked on lots of projects in the past before joining Telus, I would say that one of my favourite aspects of Agile is the ability to launch fresh programmes and products quickly, and really focusing on what that customer needs to be able to get going with the product, with the idea, with the programme. I like that you can be much more responsive, but equally be thoughtful about what those customer needs are, whilst also reacting quickly.
If I was going to join another team and take with me what I've learned through my agile journey, is I would certainly recommend the teams working to a 4-weekly sprint cycle with the opportunity to meet at a retrospect. I think this has really worked, to be able to come together as small groups, have a really open and honest conversation about what's worked well, celebrate our successes, what hasn't worked so well, and what do we need to be thinking about in our next sprint. It's really enabled us to be confident as professionals in our subject matter expertise areas, to test and try new things and have the confidence to really apply new changes as we continue on our journey of continuous improvement.
The one thing I'd miss most if I move back to a non-agile team, I love the retros. I think they're really beneficial. Again, it's good to look back and review how we've performed as a team. and individually, but also, what we've achieved. It reinvigorates you, it gives you that sense of achievement and actually, a pat on the back. And then how do we actually make sure we take that forward, and how do we improve on it? I think that's been a real success, and I think it's something that I'll miss if we did move to another team.
All right, there we go.
Oh, it makes me so
Wow.
to see their lovely faces and hear some feedback like that.
This is amazing that to see the people themselves telling about their experiences and sharing. One thing that comes up to me is that they're really a team. Everybody were talking about our team. Nobody said me or what I'm doing. It really is a cohesive team now. So congratulations, you've been working a lot with this and your team is doing great. One thing that came up with me is that somebody said it's not permanent. So I think that's a very important point, as seeing the operating model as a product itself. We can try things out, we can experiment, we can do one thing a sprint and see did it help us. If it didn't, let's scrap it. So what are your thoughts about this, Kirsten, about giving the security of let's try things out and we can always go back if needed?
Yeah, I think that's the message throughout, that we're trying something new. It's a test and learn. If it doesn't work, we'll work it out in the retrospectives and we'll change track and we'll pivot. And I think at the start of this journey, everybody was a bit apprehensive about it, but now it's kind of part and parcel of what we do, and we're embracing it rather than being scared about it. And if you fail, you get up and you do something else, and that's okay. So it's psychological safety and knowing that it's test and learn, and if it fails, we'll innovate and we'll try again.
How do you find your sprints in a TA process context? Fixed duration or related to specific outcome? Or if I understand you correctly, you're not working in specific Scrum sprints, but you're just having 4 weeks and you have a review or a retro and see where you are. So continuously improving through the Kanban board. Is that correct?
So, it's kind of a mix. I think I've seen the term of Scrum ban coined somewhere around. So although we're doing Kanban, we recognise the value of some of the ceremonies in the Scrum framework. So that's why we're stopping every 4 weeks. It's almost like you need that time box, a fixed time box. Say, okay, this is what we've done in this 4 weeks. If we're going to try something, when are we going to stop to review it? Are we going to run an experiment for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks? Always important to have that stop. In a Kanban, you're feeding work all the time through, so you need somewhere to stop. It's like, hey guys, we need to stop and see how we're doing, or you just continue forever. That's kind of where talent acquisition was at the start of this. Everyone had their heads down, just churning through the work they had, not coming together to kind of reflect and create those experiments. Let's get some ideas out. It just wasn't happening. So that's really important for us to have that stop. As we've mentioned before, let's stop, see how we're doing.
I like how you're borrowing from the lean framework as well, with the work in progress thinking, with understanding how much it is, with bottleneck discussions, with really kind of visualizing the work, doing that. So there's elements from lean, there's elements from Kanban, there's elements from, Kanban is from lean and from Scrum. If you would look at your team where you started and where you're right now, what's happened?
I think we've talked a lot about numbers, okay, which they're important. That's the kind of thing that your sponsors will want to see to make sure that your sponsors want to see you making progress and their investment is worth it. So here's some numbers, we're getting better. But what has been really important to us is some of the feedback you see here. It's all about value and how you're delivering to customers. We also have this questionnaire that we go out to candidates as well. How are you finding the experience with our team? And to get that back at 99%, it's like, wow, well done, guys. We are making a difference. regardless of the numbers, this is the kind of feedback that we're after. That's what's really important. Okay.
And we always try and say, don't we, to the team, that a hire isn't just a hire. You're not transacting. It's a person's life. Once you've got a role, it means the world to them. And so we have to really view this and the process and that candidate experience is absolutely key. And I think just that stat there shows that the quality of our service hasn't dropped throughout this change, in that actually 99% people said they've had a really positive experience with TA, and I think that's really important to stress.
Yeah, so I will quickly finish on some numbers. I think we've got one more slide after this, but just to show you the ongoing journey of where we are. So if we look at the number of vacancies filled as a team, since we started, there's a 362% increase, which is, beyond imagination is the word for it. We just, kind of reflecting on that as well, the amount of demand we've seen. The amount of demand that's landed on us over the last 6 months. If we weren't working in this way, God knows what would have happened to the team.
I do say that quite often, that if we were structured in the old way, in that hierarchical structure, we would not have been able to deal with the amount of requisitions and just the sheer volume that's come through the delivery engine. We just wouldn't been equipped, and the flexibility and the way that we've been able to change and grow, it's been phenomenal. And without this change, I seriously think we would have struggled.
You see velocity as well, that's gone up through the roof. But numbers aside, so just to finish off.
I think we've touched on it before, but I think prior to all of this change, the team was quite reticent, and that we're continuously adapting and changing, and they're kind of embracing that, and they're actually volunteering to move and to change. And I think that's the key, isn't it? That we're continuously on a journey. Just because we've managed to do all of this really good stuff, we've still got loads more to do and loads more changes to make. So it's constant evolution.
So finally, if I just return to the principle of that adapt model that I spoke about, we look at the last 2 steps of promotion and transfer. So we've told a number of stories across the business to help explain our position, where we're coming from, using data to help influence decisions. What that has led to is more and more people are becoming aware of what we're doing, and they want a piece of the action, if I'm frank with you. So from what started off as a little kind of almost proof of concept, if you like, in talent acquisition of, right, let's try Agile, see if it can help us. We're now going up to the next level. So our subdivision in HR is after talent and learning and culture as well. So we've now got 3 Scrum Masters in this space, and the other teams in the division are starting to work in this way as well. We've been supporting those people. We've also been helping the wider HR to understand what we're doing. So they're getting an interest in Agile now and how they can work to support us while transforming as well. And we've been welcomed to organizational tables now with transformation programs going on across the organization in the UK. So from coming in almost being look down your nose at a Scrum Master in HR, we're now at the table on all these transformation programs, telling our story and helping other teams to develop as well. So there we go.
I just want to, we've got 1 more minute remaining. I just want to say congratulations to both of you. This is excellent. This is on global scale, remarkable what you've done. Because I'm following quite a lot of companies, working with quite a lot of customers. You are very in the forefront globally on how to work in Agile, in an HR team. And just, if I may say, I'm not in a position to say that, but I'm really proud of you, really, really proud. Thank you for being here to share your story. It was highly appreciated. Everybody has loved your story and learned so much. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Kirsten. And we want to hear more about your journey, hopefully in a later stage. So thanks everyone who were on the call, and let's keep in touch.
Lovely. Thanks everybody. Thank you guys.